Table 7, Le Ciel, Restaurant Manhattan, 8:12 p.m. on a Friday. The entire restaurant was whispering, not because of the newly served foie gras, nor the just-opened bottle of Romanée Conti, 1990, but because of the man sitting at table 7. He wore a pale gray dress shirt, top 2 buttons undone, no tie, no flashy watch, just a thin silver wedding band on his left ring finger. A face handsome in that over-30 way that still turns heads, but eyes tired as if he'd spent the day negotiating with his 6-year-old daughter over whether ice cream counts as dinner. No one in the room recognized him, at least not yet, except for the 2 men tucked in the shadowed corner table near the bar. Blake Harrington and Trent Carver were shaking with silent laughter phones hidden beneath napkins lenses pointed straight at table 7. They'd been planning this prank for a week. The script was perfect. Create a fake profile on the ultra-exclusive dating app for the elite post. A few regular guy photos of someone named Alex Ryan, real photos, real person. But no one would ever guess that person owned the glass tower across the Hudson. They had howled at the thought of Evelyn Harper, the 32nd floor accountant, who always wore oversized dresses and ate lunch alone agreeing to the date. They pictured her walking into the most expensive restaurant in the city, realizing she'd been matched with a guy who looked like he took the subway, and then the tears, the humiliated escape. The video would be on TikTok before midnight. Hashtag #FatGirlFail would trend until morning. The revolving glass door spun. Evelyn appeared. She wore the only nice dress she owned, a black below-the-knee number with 3/4 sleeves cotton silk blend bought on sale 3 seasons ago. Her long brown hair was tied low, a few loose curls framing her face. She froze at the entrance, eyes wide as she took in where she was. Both hands clutched her purse strap like it might shatter if it hit the marble floor. The maitre d' led her toward table 7. Blake squeezed Trent's hand under the table, eyes gleaming. Alexander Whitmore stood. He was a full head taller than Evelyn, broad-shouldered movements, slow and natural, like he was born to stand in places like this. He smiled, not too bright, just enough to warm the cold corner of the room. "Evelyn?" he said, voice low and clear, loud enough for nearby tables to glance over. "Thank you for coming." She blinked, lips trembling. I think there's been a mistake. The man who asked me out said his name was Alex Ryan. My real name is Alexander Whitmore, but you can call me Alex if you like." He pulled out her chair with the ease of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. "I owe you an explanation. And dinner." Evelyn sat face pale. She glanced around, spotted Blake and Trent barely containing their laughter. She understood immediately. This wasn't a date. This was a setup. "Again, I should go," she whispered, starting to stand. Alexander didn't stop her. He just looked at her calm, steady, deep enough that she couldn't quite leave. "You can," he said. "But if you stay for 10 minutes, I promise I'll make sure the 2 idiots at that table pay dearly for messing with the woman I've been wanting to ask out for a very long time." Evelyn stood frozen, heart pounding. She looked at him, then back at Blake and Trent, their smiles now slightly strained. Then slowly, she sat back down. Alexander smiled again, deeper this time, as if the whole world had just exhaled. "White or red?" he asked, like he was talking to an old friend. "White is fine," Evelyn answered, voice still shaky. "Sancerre 2021 it is, and you're mildly allergic to shellfish, if I remember correctly." She snapped her head up, eyes wide. "How did you know that? I read the employee files," he admitted without hesitation. "And I've been wanting to ask you to dinner for 6 months. I just never found a good enough reason. Today, those 2 accidentally handed me the perfect one." At the corner table, Blake and Trent suddenly realized something was very wrong. Their grins faded. Trent glanced at his phone. The angle was still perfect, but they were no longer sure who they were filming. Alexander lifted his gaze toward them for a single second. That was all it took. The maitre d' appeared instantly at their table, leaned in and whispered something. 2 minutes later, Blake and Trent were quietly escorted out, no explanation offered. Evelyn watched them go, mouth slightly open. Alexander poured her wine and slid the glass toward her. "Now it's just us," he said. "No prank, no audience, no pressure. Just dinner between me, a single dad who constantly forgets to buy milk, and you, the woman I've wanted to sit across from for a very long time." Evelyn lifted the glass hand, still trembling slightly. "Your daughter?" she asked softly. "How old is she?" 6.5. Her name's Madeline, but the whole world calls her Maddie." Alexander smiled, and for the first time, the smile reached his eyes. "She's at home with her grandmother right now, and I'm 90% sure she's eating ice cream before dinner." Evelyn let out a small, genuine laugh, the first of the night. The Sancerre had just touched Evelyn's lips when the first course arrived, a tiny plate holding exactly 3 seared foie gras medallions perched on paper-thin toast, kissed with a few drops of herb-infused honey. Evelyn stared at the dish she had only ever seen on Instagram, then at the man across from her, the one who had just admitted to studying her employee file 6 months ago. "You weren't kidding when you said you've been noticing me for a while, were you?" she asked, suspicion still lingering in her voice. Alexander cut a small piece of foie gras with a silver knife and placed it on her plate. "I don't make a habit of joking about that." He paused as if weighing his next words. "Last November, you were in the 32nd floor hallway, hugging a stack of reports so thick you could barely see over it. You were walking and dropping pens at the same time. I was standing by the elevator about to step out and pick one up for you, but you bent down, yourself, laughed at the pen that rolled under the cabinet. That laugh. I never forgot it." Evelyn's cheeks burned all the way to her ears. "You remember that?" "I remember you were wearing a dark green sweater with a tiny coffee stain on the left sleeve." He shrugged as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "I have a photographic memory. Maddie calls it Dad's superpower." The second course arrived velvety pumpkin soup crowned with a dollop of creme fraiche and toasted chestnuts. Evelyn lifted her spoon, breathed in the warm herby scent, then gathered every ounce of courage to ask the question that had been gnawing at her for the past 10 minutes. "Alexander, you're really rich, aren't you?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked straight into her eyes for a long, quiet moment, then gave a single small nod. "Very," he said. "Rich enough to buy the entire building we work in without a board meeting. Rich enough to own a private jet, yet still drive Maddie to school myself every morning because she likes going through the Lincoln Tunnel." Evelyn set her spoon down. "Then why the casual photos, the fake name on a dating app? Why let those two think you were a nobody?" "Because I'm tired of people looking at my bank account before they look at me." His voice dropped. 4 years ago, my wife Sophia left exactly 1 week after Forbes put me on the cover. She said she couldn't live with a man the whole world wanted a piece of. She wanted flashbulbs, parties, Paris, Fashion Week. I just wanted to stay home, change Maddie's diapers, and read Little Red Riding Hood for the 103rd time. He stopped his fingers, gently turning the old silver wedding band on his left hand, the ring that no longer had its pair. "After the divorce, I tried dating a few times. They looked at me like a lifetime lottery ticket. I stopped. Until I saw your file." He gave a small, sad smile. "Under hobbies, you wrote baking and reading Julia Child cookbooks. I thought finally someone who didn't write Maldives vacations or shopping on Avenue Montaigne." Evelyn didn't know how to respond. She whispered, "I've never left the country. I've never successfully made a macaron," he replied instantly. "We can balance each other out." The main course arrived, perfectly medium-rare Wagyu beef red wine reduction, a charred rosemary sprig on the side. Alexander cut her portion before his own, an effortless gesture that made Evelyn's heart melt. "Are you afraid," she asked, "that I'll be like the others?" "Yes," he said, setting down his knife and fork, looking at her with complete seriousness. "But I'm more afraid of missing the chance to know a woman brave enough to walk into a 3-Michelin-star restaurant wearing a cotton dress simply because it's the nicest one she owns." "You're far braver than I am, Evelyn." She lowered her head, eyes stinging. No one had ever called her insecurities courage. Alexander lifted a hand. The maitre d' appeared instantly. "The special dessert," he said. "The one the chef's still too nervous to put on the menu." 5 minutes later, a small round plate was set between them. On it sat a perfect little lemon tart, glossy golden filling torched meringue peaks, and in the center, written in melted chocolate, in tiny, delicate script, "For the girl who smiles at dropped pens." Evelyn started crying right there at the table. Alexander said nothing. He simply reached out, palm up. Trembling, Evelyn placed her hand in his. "I won't promise you the whole world," he said softly. "I can only promise you a small corner of it, one with Maddie. Saturday mornings, making burnt pancakes, nights when she has a fever, and we take turns staying awake. Do you want to try?" Evelyn dabbed her eyes with the silk napkin, then nodded a tiny nod, but enough for Alexander to break into the brightest smile of the entire night. "Then next week," he said. "Saturday, 9 a.m. Come to my place. Maddie wants to meet the lady who can make a better lemon tart than Daddy." I'm not that great a cook," she stammered. "That's fine. I have an entire kitchen nobody ever uses. We'll ruin a few batches, laugh until our stomachs hurt, then order pizza." Maddie will love it. When they left the restaurant close to midnight, a light Manhattan rain had begun to fall. Alexander slipped off his suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders. Evelyn looked up at him, and for the first time that night, she didn't feel like the butt of someone's joke. A gleaming black Rolls-Royce Phantom slid silently to the curb. The driver opened the door with a slight bow. Alexander tilted his head. "Let me drive you home." Evelyn glanced at the car, then at him, and smiled the first completely unguarded smile of the evening. "Okay," she said. "But next time it's my treat. I know a Vietnamese banh mi place in Queens. Best pate in the city. $8. Alexander threw his head back and laughed, the sound echoing through the rain. "Deal." They climbed in. The door closed, sealing them off from the wet world outside. In the warm darkness of the leather seats, his hand found hers. Evelyn didn't pull away. Saturday, a.m. Evelyn stood in front of the unmarked steel door on the top floor of the glass tower, overlooking the Hudson. She was wearing a cream sweater and jeans, clutching a bakery box containing the lemon tarts she'd stayed up until 2 a.m. perfecting. Her palms were damp with nervous sweat. The door swung open before she could ring the bell. A 6.5-year-old hurricane with blonde pigtails, a unicorn t-shirt, and pink shorts launched herself forward. "Are you Miss Evelyn? Daddy said you make desserts better than all the chefs on TV." She skidded to a stop 1 step away, tilted her head up, blue eyes sparkling. "I'm Madeline Whitmore, but everybody calls me Maddie. Can I hug you?" Evelyn barely managed a nod before Maddie threw her arms around Evelyn's waist with such force the box nearly flew out of her hands. Alexander appeared behind his daughter, hair still tousled from sleep, wearing a gray t-shirt and sweatpants, holding a well-loved stuffed bear with one torn ear. "Morning," he said, voice low and morning rough in the best way. "Come in before she scares you off." She had sugar at 6. Maddie grabbed Evelyn's free hand and dragged her inside. The penthouse was enormous, yet nothing like Evelyn had imagined. No cold marble museum, just warm wood floors covered in thick rugs, walls plastered with children's artwork, a sofa buried under stuffed animals, and a tiny desk with an egg-shaped chair in the corner. "This is our house," Maddie announced like a tour guide. "That's the living room, that's the kitchen. Daddy said we're allowed to make a huge mess today, because you're here, and this is Princess Maddie's castle." She pointed proudly at a white fabric tent, glowing with fairy lights, and a world map rug. Evelyn set the bakery box on the kitchen island and looked around. No housekeeper in sight, no security hovering. Just a billionaire trying and failing to put his daughter's hair in pigtails. "I want Miss Evelyn to do it," Maddie declared, racing back and pressing a brush and 2 hair ties into Evelyn's hands. Evelyn sank to the floor. Maddie plopped obediently between her knees. The little girl's hair was silk and smelled like baby shampoo. Evelyn's fingers shook as she started the first braid. Alexander leaned against the wall, arms folded, watching them with an expression so soft it squeezed Evelyn's heart. "Daddy says you're the nicest person ever," Maddie said, tilting her head obediently for the second braid. "He said you smile when you drop pens. Daddy likes people who smile a lot." Evelyn's cheeks flamed. She shot Alexander a look. He just shrugged and grinned like a kid caught stealing cookies. They baked all morning. Maddie stood on a step stool in a tiny mini-chef apron, arms white with flour. Evelyn showed her how to whisk eggs while Alexander was officially in charge of washing dishes and sneaking raw batter. "Daddy no eating raw dough," Maddie scolded. "Miss Evelyn says there are germs." "Germs are scared of me," Alexander replied, stealing another spoonful. Evelyn laughed. Really laughed for the first time inside this apartment. When the first batch of lemon tarts came out of the oven lopsided and slightly charred on one edge, Maddie cheered like they'd won a prize. "I get to cut the first piece for Miss Evelyn." She wielded a plastic knife, sawed off an enormous wedge, and slid it onto a princess paper plate. "Because you're our most special guest." Evelyn took the plate, eyes stinging. "Thank you, Maddie. This is the best piece of anything anyone has ever given me." Maddie cocked her head. "Will you come back? Next time, can we make chocolate ones?" "Daddy melts chocolate into soup." Alexander raised both hands. "That was one time." Evelyn set the plate down and crouched to Maddie's eye level. "I'll come back," she said firmly. "Any time you want me to." Maddie studied her for a long second, then flung her arms around Evelyn's neck. "I want you to stay forever," she whispered into Evelyn's ear. Daddy was sad when no one smiled at him. Now you're here and he smiles all the time. Alexander turned away, pretending to cough, but Evelyn saw the shine in his eyes. At noon, they gave up cooking and ordered pizza because all three of them were exhausted. Maddie sat between them on the couch legs, swinging tomato sauce on her chin. Let me tell you something. Maddie began, eyes bright. Yesterday, Daddy said he'd marry you if your tart was better than his. You totally won. Alexander choked on his water. Madeline Grace Whitmore. Evelyn laughed so hard her stomach hurt, feeling for the first time in her life that she truly belonged somewhere. Late afternoon, Maddie fell asleep on Evelyn's lap halfway through a cartoon movie. Alexander carefully carried her to bed. When he came back, he sat beside Evelyn close enough that their shoulders touched. Thank you, he said quietly. Today was the happiest day Maddie's had in a very long time. And mine too. Evelyn looked at him, then at the apartment, now filled with laughter and the faint smell of slightly burnt lemon tarts. I'm the one who should be thanking you, she whispered. I never thought I'd be sitting here in a place like this with a little girl calling me Miss Evelyn and a man who doesn't look at me like I'm someone's punchline. Alexander brushed a strand of hair from her face. You're not a punchline, he said, voice warm and low. You're the person Maddie and I have been waiting for. Outside the windows, the Manhattan sunset burned red and gold. Inside, there was only the soft sound of Maddie breathing down the hall, and two adult hearts finally beating in the same rhythm. Evelyn rested her head on Alexander's shoulder. She was home. 2 weeks after meeting Maddie on a Friday at exactly 7:00 a.m., Alexander sent Evelyn one single text, Alexander. Picking you up tomorrow at 10. Bring a warm coat. And nothing but your smile. Maddie's coming too. Evelyn read it so many times the screen practically wore out, then panicked and tore through her closet. The only warm coat she owned was a camel-colored wool one from College Cuffs, slightly frayed. She wore it anyway. It was the warmest thing she had. At 10:00 sharp, a glossy black Range Rover pulled up in front of her old Brooklyn walk-up. No Rolls-Royce, no driver, just Alexander in a charcoal turtleneck, and Maddie in the back seat, wearing oversized kids' sunglasses, waving like a maniac. Hi, Miss Evelyn. Today you're Daddy's girlfriend, Maddie announced the second the door opened. Alexander flushed crimson and clapped a hand over his daughter's mouth. Maddie, we talked about volume. But the whole world needs to know, she protested through his fingers. Evelyn laughed so hard, her stomach hurt sliding into the car beside a billionaire for the first time without feeling like she didn't belong. They drove out of the city over the George Washington Bridge, then turned onto a narrow road blanketed in golden leaves. Maddie sang along with the radio for 3 straight hours, forcing Evelyn to harmonize on every chorus. Alexander just smiled occasionally, reaching over the gear shift to squeeze Evelyn's hand. Just before noon, the car stopped in front of a 2-story wooden house nestled in a forest of blazing red maples. A sprawling pumpkin patch stretched out in front, and thin white smoke curled from the chimney. Welcome to the place I run to when I need to breathe, Alexander said, opening her door. Maddie was already sprinting across the field. Miss Evelyn Pick, the biggest pumpkin ahong. I want one as big as my whole body, Evelyn stood in the middle of the patch. Autumn wind whipping her hair, and for the first time in her life she didn't care that her coat was old or how many pounds she carried. Alexander walked beside her, hands in his pockets, shoulders brushing hers. I bought this place when Maddie was 3, he said. An old house, some land, no one knowing my name. Here I'm just Alex, the dad who lets his kid draw on the walls with crayons. They spent an hour hunting pumpkins. Maddie picked one she couldn't possibly lift, so Alexander ended up carrying both his daughter and the massive pumpkin back to the car. Evelyn took photos of the two of them, tears of laughter rolling down her cheeks, as Maddie made ridiculous faces. At midday, they roasted marshmallows over the living room fireplace. Maddie passed out on the fluffy rug head on her ancient stuffed bear. Alexander tucked a blanket around her, then came back and sat beside Evelyn in front of the flames. For the first time, it was just the two of them. Do you know what scares me the most? He asked, voice barely above the crackle of the fire. Evelyn shook her head. That you'll think all of this, the house, the cars, the money is why I'm here with you. He stared into the flames. That you'll believe you're just some ordinary girl I picked up from someone else's cruel joke. Evelyn was quiet for a long time. Then she reached over and took his hand. Alexander, she said, saying his full name completely for the first time. I'm not afraid of being ordinary. I'm afraid of the day you realize I really am ordinary. No yachts, no gala gowns, no French fluency. I only know how to make lemon tarts and smile when I drop pens. He turned to her. The firelight turned his blue eyes molten. "Evelyn," he answered, voice trembling. "I've had everything this world can give me. The only thing I've been missing is someone who smiles when she drops pens. And she's sitting right here." He leaned in slow enough that she could have vanished if she wanted to. She didn't. Evelyn closed her eyes. Their first kiss happened in front of a wood-burning fireplace in a cabin surrounded by maple trees, with Maddie's soft breathing in the background and the faint smell of burnt marshmallow in the air. No fireworks, no soundtrack, just the autumn wind slipping through the cracks and two hearts finally beating at the same speed. When they pulled apart, foreheads still touching, Alexander whispered, "This is my real first date in 4 years." Evelyn smiled, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Then I'm honored." Outside, maple leaves drifted across the yard. Inside, the fire kept crackling. For the first time in her life, Evelyn Harper knew what it felt like to be loved for exactly who she was, not her body, not her bank account, but the plain, ordinary, pen-dropping girl she had always been. An ordinary girl who had finally found the place she belonged. Late November Manhattan, cold enough to bite. Evelyn had all but moved into the penthouse without anyone ever saying the words out loud. Her clothes now hung in the closet. Her toothbrush lived next to Maddie's sparkly unicorn one. And every Friday night, she was the official reader of Goodnight Moon. But there was one room at the end of the hall she had never entered. A walnut door, always closed, never locked. Maddie had mentioned it only once in a whisper. That was old Mommy's room. "Daddy says we leave it so I can still smell her." Saturday night, Maddie fell asleep early with a slight cold. Alexander carried her to bed, tucked the blankets under her chin, then came back to the living room. Evelyn was curled on the sofa, cradling a mug of hot cocoa, staring at nothing. "I need to ask you something," she said quietly. "Am I allowed?" Alexander sat beside her and nodded at once. "You're allowed to ask me anything. Always." "Sophia, did she really leave just because you wanted to stay home with Maddie? It feels like there's more." He was silent for a very long time. Then he stood and held out his hand. "Come with me." He led her to the walnut door. His fingers trembled slightly on the knob. The door opened. The room was small, lit only by a soft, moon-shaped nightlight. A double bed with white linens. On the wall, a wedding photo, Alexander and a radiant blonde woman laughing like California sunshine. Next to it, a newborn Maddie tiny in her mother's arms. Alexander opened the top drawer of the dresser. Inside was a thick folder, dark blue cover. "This is the real reason," he said, voice raw. Evelyn took it. The first page was a DNA test dated 4.5 years ago. Result, Alexander Whitmore is not the biological father of Madeline Whitmore. Probability of paternity 0%. She looked up, stunned. "Sophia had an affair," he said, emotion drained from his tone. "She was pregnant 2 months before we married, but never told me. I found out when Maddie was 1 after a routine blood test. I confronted her. She cried, said it was one drunken night with an old college friend. I forgave her. I already loved Maddie more than my own lifeblood, or no blood." He opened the second drawer. Inside was a stack of handwritten letters in Sophia's slanted script. But she couldn't forgive herself. She believed I stayed out of duty. She started drinking, then cocaine. One morning she left a 4-page letter. She wasn't fit to be a mother, wasn't fit to be a wife. She would destroy Maddie if she stayed. 3 months later, she mailed the divorce papers from Los Angeles, along with full relinquishment of parental rights. I signed the same day. Asked for nothing. Evelyn turned the pages, tears falling onto the ink. "I've never told a soul," Alexander continued, voice cracking. "The press only knows Billionaire's wife leaves because she couldn't handle the pressure. No one knows I chose to raise a child who isn't biologically mine. I'm terrified of the day Maddie grows up and asks why her mother left, and I won't know how to answer." He sat on the edge of the bed, hands covering his face. "I was afraid you'd leave once you knew I'm not her real father, that you'd think I'm insane, or pretending." Evelyn set the letters down, knelt in front of him, and gently pulled his hands away. "Alexander Whitmore," she said, voice shaking but steady. "Look at me." He lifted his red-rimmed eyes. "You have chosen to love a little girl who doesn't share your DNA every single day for the last 4 years. You changed diapers, stayed up all night, learned how to do pigtails, learned to make half-burnt cookies, learned lullabies even though you sound like a dying duck. You chose to be Maddie's dad with your heart, not a test result." She squeezed his hands hard. "I'm not leaving. I only love you more. And I love Maddie more. Because she has the best father in the world, no matter what any piece of paper says. Alexander broke. For the first time, Evelyn saw him cry like a child. She wrapped her arms around him, let him bury his face in her shoulder, let him release every silent, lonely year he had carried alone. After a long while, he whispered against her neck, "I'll tell Maddie one day when she's old enough, but I want you beside me when I do. Will you stay for that?" Evelyn kissed the top of his head. "I'll be right there, and I'll tell her dad is the bravest man I've ever known." That night, they didn't leave the room immediately. Alexander opened a drawer and took out a small navy velvet box. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet, engraved with Madeline, and on the inside tiny words, "To the father who chose me." "I bought this when she was 3, he said, "but I was never brave enough to put it on her, afraid she'd ask why it said chose. Now I know. One day I'll fasten it around her wrist and tell her the story of the dad who chose her every single day of his life." Evelyn lifted the bracelet and kissed the hidden inscription. They turned off the light and closed the door. But this time it wasn't a secret anymore. The secret had been spoken aloud, and instead of breaking them, it only made their love stronger. Outside, the first snow of the season began to fall silently over Manhattan. Inside, 3 people, a family bound not by blood, but by heart, were finally ready to face everything ahead. Together. December 24th, 7:00 p.m. Manhattan is buried in snow. The penthouse glows gold and red. A nearly 13-foot Christmas tree brushes the ceiling, decorated entirely by Maddie and Evelyn hand-painted ornaments, hopelessly tangled tinsel, and a star on top that leans dramatically to one side because Maddie insisted on climbing the step stool herself. Alexander stood behind her, the whole half-hour arms ready to catch her, but in the end, he let her do it alone. The star is crooked, yet all 3 agree it's the most beautiful star in the world. The air smells of gingerbread and hot chocolate. Evelyn is wearing a reindeer apron, hair, and a high ponytail, face dusted with flour. Maddie sits on the kitchen island legs, swinging, wielding an enormous wooden spoon as she stirs melted chocolate. "1 more teaspoon of vanilla, Mommy," Evelyn Maddie commands. "Just 1, or your dad will need new teeth for Christmas." Evelyn laughs, glancing at Alexander, who is wrestling with a string of blinking lights in the corner. Alexander looks up, mock offended. "I heard that. You 2 are trying to poison me, aren't you?" Maddie giggles, slides off the counter, and barrels into his legs. "No, Daddy, I just want you fatter so you're cuddlier." Evelyn blushes at the casual mommy that slipped out of Maddie's mouth, but the little girl said it as naturally as breathing, as if it were the most obvious thing in the universe. 8:30 p.m. They change into matching Christmas pajamas, red flannel with reindeer, chosen by Maddie online, and rush-ordered by her father. Maddie lies between them, head on Evelyn's lap, clutching The Night Before Christmas. Evelyn reads while Alexander strokes his daughter's hair. When she reaches, "Not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse," Maddie lets out a gigantic yawn, and her eyes flutter shut. Alexander carries her to bed, tucks the blankets tight, kisses her forehead. "Sleep tight, my princess, night, Daddy, and Mommy Evelyn." Maddie mumbles, already half dreaming. When he returns to the living room, Evelyn is standing by the tree holding a small craft paper gift tied with a red ribbon. "Your present," she says, voice trembling. "I've been working on it since October. I was scared you wouldn't like it." Alexander opens it. Inside is a small wooden frame holding a watercolor painting, the 3 of them standing in front of the fireplace at the cabin holding hands. Maddie drew Alexander impossibly tall, Evelyn adorably round, and herself with tiny angel wings. At the bottom, in wobbly child handwriting, "My real family, Jiadin Tutkukon." He is silent for a very long time. Then he sets the frame on the table, pulls Evelyn into his arms, and holds her so tightly she can feel his heart racing. "You have no idea how much this means to me," he whispers into her hair. "My turn." He reaches behind the tree and hands her a dark green velvet box. Evelyn opens it. Inside is a slender platinum ring with a small pearl at the center, surrounded by tiny diamonds forming a heart. Engraved inside the band, "To the woman who chose us." Alexander drops to one knee among scattered wrapping paper and stray tinsel. "Evelyn Harper." His voice cracks with emotion. "I won't promise you the whole world, because I've already given you mine, a 6.5-year-old girl who calls you mommy, and a man who thought he'd never love again. Will you marry me, be Maddie's mother for real? Let me hold your hand for the rest of my life," Evelyn cries. Tears fall onto the hardwood floor, onto her reindeer slippers. Yes, she chokes out. 1,000 times yes. He slides the ring onto her finger stands and kisses her beneath 1,000 tiny Christmas lights. The kiss tastes like hot chocolate and gingerbread, and it lasts forever. They don't go to bed right away. They sit under the tree until midnight, fingers laced, listening to the snow against the windows. You know, Alexander whispers last year, the first Christmas after Sophia left, I sat right here alone. The tree had exactly one ornament Maddie made at school. I thought I'd never have a real Christmas again. Evelyn rests her head on his shoulder. Now we do. And we'll have so many more. They turn off every light except the tree. In the glittering dark, they hold each other and listen to the soft sound of Maddie breathing down the hall. The first Christmas of their family of 3. Not perfect, not related by blood, but the most real thing they've ever had. And beneath the tree, beside the plate of cookies and the glass of milk Maddie left for Santa, lies a folded note she secretly wrote before falling asleep. Dear Santa, thank you for bringing me Mommy Evelyn. This is the best Christmas ever. Love, Maddie Alexander, and Evelyn will find it tomorrow morning, and they will cry again. But these will be tears of happiness, the kind no cruel prank in the world could ever destroy. May 27th, 4:00 p.m., on the banks of the Hudson. Spring came early this year. Japanese cherry blossoms along the riverbank are exploding in pink petals drifting onto the water like soft pink rain. A small clearing in the Whitmore family's private riverside park has been turned into an outdoor chapel, one white floral arch, a few rows of white wooden chairs, and an aisle blanketed in cherry blossom petals. Fewer than 50 guests. Maddie's grandma Carol, Evelyn's sister with her husband and 3 rambunctious kids, Alexander's closest college friends, and one quiet corner for the old accounting department colleagues who once witnessed the cruel prank and now sit dabbing their eyes. No press, no drones, no black-suited security, just cool river breeze and birdsong. Maddie appears first, the only flower girl. She's in a poofy white dress with a baby's breath crown clutching a tiny basket. She walks slowly, solemnly, scattering white and blush-pink rose petals. Halfway down the aisle, she spins around and stage whispers, "Daddy, am I doing it right?" The entire gathering bursts into laughter. Alexander in pale gray suit at the end of the aisle nods frantically, eyes already red. The music starts, not a string quartet, just one violinist and an acoustic guitarist playing a slow, tender version of Can't Help Falling in Love. Then Evelyn steps out. She is wearing the simplest wedding dress she ever dared dream of, ivory satin, soft V-neck, long lace sleeves, no crystals, no sparkle. Only a delicate embroidered floral band at the waist that she and Maddie stitched together over 3 weeks. Her hair is down, a single pale pink camellia tucked behind one ear. No veil. She wants Alexander to see her eyes from the very first second. As she walks closer, Alexander covers his mouth with one hand, shoulders shaking. Maddie, now standing beside him, grabs Evelyn's hand and announces loudly enough for the front row to hear, "Mommy is the most beautiful in the whole world." The officiant is an old judge, Carol's friend, with a grandfatherly voice. Alexander speaks first. Evelyn Harper. The first day I met you, I thought I was only rescuing you from a stupid prank. Turns out you were the one rescuing me, rescuing Maddie, rescuing every dark day I thought would last forever. I promise to love you every single day, not with money or fame, but with burnt pancakes on Saturday mornings, with sleepless nights, when Maddie is sick, with every moment. I choose you, choose us, choose this family, no matter what the world says. You are my home, forever. Evelyn is crying before he finishes. She has to take a deep breath to speak. Alexander Whitmore. I once believed no one would ever love me for exactly who I am. Then you showed up and truly saw me when the rest of the world only wanted to laugh. You gave me a little girl who calls me Mommy, even though I never gave birth to her. You gave me a family I never dared dream of. I promise to love you, love Maddie, love even the hard days ahead with slightly charred lemon tarts, with hugs when you're tired, with every beat of my heart. You are not just the man I love. You are my miracle. Maddie delivers the rings. She opens the velvet box with great ceremony, 2 slim platinum bands engraved inside with today's date, 2705, and 3 tiny letters A-E-M. When Alexander slips the ring onto Evelyn's finger, Maddie cheers. Done. Kiss her now, Daddy. Everyone laughs again. Alexander bends down and kisses his wife gentle, long as if the entire world has narrowed to just the 3 of them and the little girl bouncing beside them. The reception is held right on the grass. Long wooden tables with white linen simple buffet barbecue salads and a towering dessert table. Evelyn and Maddie baked together all week. The wedding cake is only 2 tiers, lemon on top, chocolate on the bottom, decorated with fresh flowers and a tiny wooden topper. 3 figures holding hands, Maddie in the middle. Blake Harrington and Trent Carver are not invited. They left the company long ago. Their family's investment firms quietly collapsed after Alexander withdrew every penny. No one mentions them today. They no longer belong in this story. As the sun sets, strings of golden lights come on. Maddie drags Evelyn and Alexander into the middle of the lawn and demands they dance to 1,000 years. The 2 adults laugh, spin each other slowly, and let their little girl hop in circles around them. Night falls. Guests drift away. Only the 3 of them remain on the grass, leaning against one another, watching the Hudson reflect the city lights. Maddie yawns, head in Evelyn's lap. "Mommy," she murmurs, "now we're really a forever family, right?" Evelyn kisses her hair. "Yes, baby. Forever." Alexander wraps his arms around both of his women. Far away, the last cherry blossom petal falls into the river and drifts off under the golden lights. A cruel prank once started everything. True love ended it by turning it into the most beautiful story they would ever have.